His fingers found me before I even realized I'd left the front door hanging open. The cold air barely registered. Only the heat of him did. My robe fell apart like it was begging to be discarded, the silk whispering against his chest as he pinned me to the wall with a hunger that had no patience. I gasped, not from pain, but from the shock of being wanted again, truly wanted, after so many nights of lying untouched beside a man who no longer looked at me like I was something to desire. Please share your thoughts in the comment section below. Each of your shares is not only a motivation for us but also contributes to spreading value to the community. If you find this content useful, don't forget to watch the whole video, like, subscribe, and share with someone you think needs to hear this too. His mouth crashed into mine, hot, desperate, consuming, so unlike the cold, perfunctory kisses of my husband, which had grown mechanical long before the love died. I felt my body respond with a reckless ache I hadn't known was still inside me. Every vow I'd ever made blurred beneath the weight of his touch, and I didn't resist. I surrendered. Right there in the hallway, with the door wide open and the world on pause, I let him take me. No lights, no shame, no apologies. Just raw need. And if you're watching this right now, thank you for seeing me. To all my returning viewers, you are the heartbeat of this space, the ones who make every late-night edit, every vulnerable share, feel worth it. And to those of you who just stumbled across this video for the first time but haven't subscribed yet, I want you to know, your support isn't just appreciated, it's vital. Every subscription is a spark that keeps this channel burning bright. My name is Kimberly, but most people just call me Kim. I'm 39, a housewife tucked away in a sleepy Pennsylvania suburb where the streets are quiet and the smiles are polite. From the outside, it probably looked like I had everything. A big house, a predictable life, a husband who paid the bills on time. But behind those neatly trimmed hedges and freshly painted walls, I was fading. Slowly, quietly. I lived in a house filled with everything except warmth. George, my husband, was never unkind. He was a man of spreadsheets and schedules, a devoted accountant who found comfort in precision and practicality. But love can't survive on logic alone. Over time, our conversations thinned, our touches became accidental, and our connection faded like wallpaper left too long in the sun. We weren't fighting, we were simply disappearing. Two strangers sharing a roof, bound more by habit than by heart. The touch vanished first, subtle, like a light dimming slowly until you forget it was ever bright. Then the passion dried up completely, leaving only the stale residue of routine. Our conversations withered into clipped exchanges about bills, errands, or what time the garbage went out. No tenderness, no curiosity. Just the logistics of two people coexisting. Somewhere along that slow unraveling, I stopped feeling seen. I didn't just feel unloved. I felt erased. It was a Saturday afternoon when the silence hit the hardest. George had left early for another one of his conferences in Cleveland. Those weekend escapes he never invited me to join. Not that I expected him to anymore. I went through the motions just like always. Scrubbed the kitchen counters, ran a load of laundry, took a long steamy bath that felt more like therapy than hygiene. Afterward, I slipped into my favorite robe, the wine-colored one that clung softly to my bare skin, a private indulgence I never wore around him. The weather outside was cold, but I had the heater humming and a glass of red wine warming my hand. I curled up on the couch, letting the silence press against me, heavy and familiar. I had nowhere to go, nothing to do, and for once, I let myself sink into that stillness, aching, restless, and quietly craving something more. That's when the knock came. Not the usual chime of the doorbell, but something heavier, more deliberate. A slow, measured knock, deep and purposeful. My heart skipped a beat as I froze, unsure. I wasn't expecting anyone. No packages, no neighbors dropping by, and certainly no friends. The silence in the house felt almost thick with tension, but something, an impulse I couldn't explain, urged me to get up and open the door. When I did, my breath caught in my throat. There he stood, taller than I remembered, with a presence that seemed to fill the doorway. His expression was calm, but there was something unreadable in the way his eyes held mine. It was Bryce, My husband's old college buddy, the one who'd crashed on our couch those early years when we were still figuring out what it meant to be married. I hadn't seen him in over 4 years, and in that time, something had shifted in him. He looked different now, broader with a darker stubble lining his jaw, and a face that seemed harder, more defined. His eyes, though, they were the same, but there was something deeper in them, a knowing that sent a shiver down my spine. They skimmed over me quickly, lingering just a moment too long on my bare thighs. "Hey," he said casually, his voice low, like he was trying to make the moment feel ordinary. But it wasn't. His eyes flicked to the laptop bag in his hand, and he raised it slightly. "George told me to drop this off. He left it in my car last night." The bag seemed irrelevant in that moment, barely registering in my mind. I was still trapped in the strange magnetic pull of his gaze, my mind spinning with questions, emotions I hadn't expected. I opened the door wider, my heart racing in my chest. "Come in," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The moment he stepped across the threshold, the air in the room shifted, subtle but undeniable. I saw the flicker in his eyes, that brief but unmistakable awareness when he realized I wasn't wearing anything underneath my robe. He tried to mask it, but the shift in his gaze gave him away. I could feel the tension crackling between us, a charge that neither of us had expected. I offered him a drink, trying to steady my nerves, and he accepted. We moved to the couch, sitting closer than was necessary, too close for comfort. His cologne was sharp, woody, and strangely intoxicating, filling the space between us. I could feel his eyes constantly drifting to my robe, the fabric shifting just enough to leave nothing hidden. Each time I moved, I could feel the heat of his body, his leg brushing mine, his arm grazing my hand. Innocent touches, accidental in the way they might have been in any other moment, but in that moment they sent sparks of electricity through my skin. Every touch was like a whisper of something we both knew was there, but neither of us dared to acknowledge. He laughed at a story I told, leaning in just a little too much, as if he needed to be closer. And then, for one fragile, suspended moment, we both paused. Silence fell between us, thick and heavy, our faces inches apart. His breath mingled with mine, and I could hear the wild pounding of my heart in my ears, drowning out everything else. He whispered something in my ear, his voice low and intimate, but I couldn't process the words. I was too caught up in the storm of sensation he stirred inside me. And then, without warning, his hand landed on my knee, warm, firm, and undeniably possessive. I should have stopped him. I should have pushed him away, told him this was wrong, but I didn't. Couldn't. Before I could even find my voice, his lips were on mine, brutal, demanding, far from soft or polite. It wasn't just a kiss. It was hungry, almost angry, as if he was claiming something he had lost. His hands moved with purpose, pulling my robe from my shoulders, and I melted into him, no resistance left in me. The sound of the wine glass crashing to the floor barely registered. The cold from the window pressed against my back, sharp against the heat building between us. And then I moaned his name, soft, breathless, without a single thread of shame to hold me back. It didn't feel like cheating, not in that moment. It felt like breathing, like I had been holding my breath for far too long, and he was the release. Without a word, without a single question, he lifted me, his strength effortless, and laid me across the couch. My legs parted instinctively, my mind too clouded to question, too consumed by the fire in my veins. My conscience was a distant memory. His mouth traced every inch of my skin, worshipping me in ways I hadn't been touched in years. It felt as if I had been waiting for this, waiting for him, for so long that nothing else mattered. I felt alive in a way I had forgotten. I felt seen, truly seen, for the first time in so long. And when it was over, when we were tangled together in the mess of sweat and tangled sheets, with guilt hanging heavy in the air between us, I didn't push him away. I didn't ask him to leave. I whispered the words I knew I shouldn't say. Stay. The guilt didn't come that night. Not when Bryce lifted me effortlessly, carrying me to the bedroom as though I weighed nothing. Not when he whispered my name against my neck. His voice thick with longing, as he moved inside me with a desperation that felt like it had been building for years. Not even when I collapsed against his chest, our legs tangled together, the sheets a tangled mess. Sheets I had once shared with my husband. No, the guilt didn't come then. It waited until the morning. I woke up first, the light spilling through the blinds like a harsh, unrelenting reminder. My robe was discarded on the floor, and my skin burned with a delicious ache, a reminder of everything that had just happened. I turned to look at Bryce, still asleep beside me. His lips parted in soft, peaceful breaths. His arm thrown across my waist possessively. For a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to smile, feeling warmth and intimacy in a way I hadn't in so long. But then, like a shadow, George's voice crept into my mind. Flat, distant, but achingly familiar. "You should go to the store while I'm gone and get those bathroom shelves we talked about." His words were so ordinary, so mundane, and yet they hit me with the force of a confession. The weight of what I had done pressed down on me, cold and suffocating. Reality hit me like a slap to the face. This wasn't just a secret. It was a tangled, beautiful, dangerous mess I had created. A mess I couldn't undo, no matter how hard I tried to ignore it. I slipped out of bed, moving quietly, careful not to wake him. My hands were trembling as I poured myself a cup of coffee, the hot liquid offering no comfort. It was just a distraction from the whirlwind in my chest. Then my phone buzzed, dragging me back into the world I didn't want to face. A message from George. Landed safely. Conference starts at noon. Might be back earlier than Sunday. Earlier than Sunday. I stared at those words as though they were a death sentence, the weight of them pressing down on me like a physical force. The reality of what I had done, the betrayal, the deception, sank in deeper. That's when Bryce appeared behind me, his shirt hanging loosely from his shoulders, exposing the lean, strong torso I had memorized only hours before. I could feel his presence before he even touched me. "Morning," he murmured, his voice low and thick, as he wrapped his arms around me from behind, his lips brushing the skin of my neck. I flinched, the touch too intimate, too raw. "Someone's regretting it already," he said, pulling back slightly, his tone teasing but laced with something darker. "I am married, Bryce," I said, the words leaving my mouth with an urgency I couldn't control. He laughed, a bitter sound that made my stomach churn. "You were not married last night," he replied, the edge in his voice making it clear he didn't care about the vows I had made. I didn't have a response. No sharp words or defenses came to me. I simply turned, walked upstairs, and locked myself in the bathroom, as if that would somehow make everything disappear. I sat on the toilet lid, heart hammering in my chest, stomach twisting in knots that wouldn't loosen. My mind raced, trying to process what had just happened, what I had just let happen. I needed to make sense of it, but the thoughts were too loud, too disjointed. Let me backtrack a little. Bryce had been George's college roommate for 2 years. Back then, he was always around, often flirting with me, but it was harmless, right? At least, that's what I told myself. George would just laugh it off. "That's Bryce," he'd say, shaking his head. "He flirts with anything that moves." It was true in a way. Bryce had that natural charm, unpolished but magnetic. He was one of those guys who never seemed to settle, always chasing something. Money, freedom, women, like he was trying to outrun whatever kept him tied down. Back then, I never thought of him as more than George's friend. He was just Bryce. No serious consideration, no spark of something deeper. But over the years, things changed. Or maybe I changed. Loneliness has a way of erasing the lines you draw for yourself, making things feel softer, more blurred. The Bryce I had seen yesterday was nothing like the carefree guy from college. He was quieter, more observant, more intense. There was a weight to him now, something unspoken that lingered in the air between us. After that morning, I thought it would be over. A momentary lapse, a mistake, a slip. But the truth is, it wasn't. It wasn't over at all. Bryce called me that evening, his voice low and smooth, like honey laced with smoke, seductive and dangerous. He told me he couldn't stop thinking about me. I told him it had to end, that we had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. He agreed, but his words felt empty, like a promise he knew he wouldn't keep. 2 nights later, we found ourselves in the back of his truck, parked behind an old storage facility near town, the world shut out by the darkness surrounding us. He undressed me with a desperation I hadn't felt in years, like a man starving, and I let him. I didn't resist because I needed this. I needed to feel wanted again, to feel like I mattered. I needed to forget how invisible I had become in my own home. His hands were rough, claiming me in ways that were raw, primal, not seductive but possessive. And I let him take everything I had, everything I had been holding back, as if it were his right. When George returned, I kissed him on the cheek, asked about his trip, playing the part of the dutiful wife as if nothing had changed. But inside, I was hiding the scent of another man, the memory of his touch still fresh on my skin. That night, while George snored beside me, I reached for my phone and texted Bryce. "I miss your mouth." He replied instantly, his words sending a thrill through me. "Come to me tomorrow. Same place, same time." And so I did. Again. And again. It became our secret, our world of stolen moments. A stolen hour here, a hotel room there. My life split into 2 versions. One where I made dinner, folded laundry, smiled and played the part of the perfect wife. And another where I wore lace beneath my jeans, and my wedding ring stayed in the car. I started dressing differently. Tighter blouses, bolder lipstick during the day. George noticed, I could tell. He looked, but he never said anything. He was too consumed by his work. Stocks, figures, deadlines. He was too lost in the numbers to notice that I was slipping away, piece by piece. One night at dinner, George looked up from his plate, his brow furrowing slightly, and said, "You seem happier." I smiled, the kind of smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Just trying something new," I replied, keeping my voice light, casual. He nodded, as if satisfied with my answer. "It suits you." If only he knew how much it wasn't true. Meanwhile, Bryce had begun calling me his dirty little treasure, a nickname that sent a thrill through me every time he said it. He reveled in how I moaned his name, how I begged for more, as though I were something to be conquered, something to be owned. He told me no woman had ever melted for him the way I did. I believed him. I wanted to believe him, needed to. But with every touch, with every stolen moment, something inside me began to rot, slowly but steadily. It wasn't just that I was cheating on George. It was that I was betraying the version of myself I used to respect. The woman who believed in loyalty, who believed in love. I was losing her, and no matter how much I tried to justify it, I couldn't escape the emptiness growing in the pit of my stomach. It happened on a Thursday. I was tangled up in the heat of the moment, lost in the rhythm of Bryce's touch, when my phone lit up with George's name. My heart stuttered, my body went cold. I froze, my breath hitching in my chest. Bryce didn't stop, his movements slow and deliberate, as if he didn't sense the panic rushing through me. I didn't stop him either. Couldn't. The phone rang once, then again. I stared at it, my mind a blur, until I finally answered, breathless, as though I had been running. "Hello." I managed, my voice shaky, pretending to sound calm as I lied. "I was just cleaning the attic. I just wanted to remind you about dinner with the Parkers tonight." George's voice was warm, oblivious. I had forgotten, of course. I lied without thinking, the words falling from my mouth like a script. "I'm already getting ready," I said, my hands trembling as I clutched the phone tighter. After he hung up, I looked at Bryce, his sweat-slicked chest heaving with each breath. My body still buzzed from the contact, still tingling with the aftermath of what we had just done, but I felt sick to my stomach. The guilt, the lies, it was all starting to suffocate me. "What?" Bryce asked, his voice low, his eyes dark and intense, as if he could feel the shift in the air. I swallowed hard, shaking my head. "This is getting dangerous." He leaned in, kissed me fiercely, almost possessively, and then whispered against my lips, "That's what makes it worth it." Later that night, as we sat at dinner with the Parkers, I could feel George's eyes on me. But it wasn't just his usual gaze. It was something sharper, something probing. "Is that a bruise?" he asked suddenly, his voice tightening as he stared at my neck. I instinctively touched the spot near my collarbone, where Bryce had left his mark, a small bruise barely hidden beneath the collar of my blouse. "Just a burn from the curling iron," I said quickly, offering him a smile I hoped was convincing. George frowned, his gaze lingering for just a moment too long, but he didn't press further. I saw the doubt flicker across his face for the first time, and it hit me like a cold wave. That's when it hit me. Fear, cold and sharp, replaced the desire I had been carrying with me. What if he found out? What if everything I had been hiding came crashing down? The affair with Bryce was like fire, intense, irresistible, and all-consuming. It burned through me with a heat I couldn't resist, a hunger I couldn't satisfy. At first, it felt exhilarating, like I had rediscovered a part of myself that had been buried for too long. But what I failed to realize, what I refused to accept, was that fire doesn't just burn, it destroys. And when it burns for long enough, it consumes everything in its path. I thought I had it under control. I told myself I could balance both worlds, that I could be the devoted wife George deserved and the secret lover Bryce craved. I convinced myself I could live in both lives, keep them separate, untouched. But I was wrong. So horribly wrong. The fantasy started to crack the day I came home and found George sitting in the living room, holding my second phone, the burner phone. Not the one I used for everyday life, but the one Bryce had bought for our secret messages and late-night calls, the one that had been hidden in the side pocket of my gym bag. Zipped up, tucked away. Or so I thought. George looked up at me, his face unreadable. The kind of expression that could freeze time, still and quiet, yet holding an unbearable weight. "What is this?" he asked, his voice too calm, too even, as he held the black phone between his fingers. My throat went dry, and my heart dropped to my stomach. I could feel the blood drain from my face, my legs weakening beneath me, as though the floor beneath me had just crumbled away. "I don't know," I lied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "That's not mine." He raised an eyebrow, his gaze narrowing slightly. "Then why is it in your gym bag?" I could hear the thudding of my own heart, pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. I reached out for the phone, my fingers trembling, but he pulled it back, holding it just out of my reach. "You want to explain the messages, or should I read them aloud?" His voice was steady, but the quiet threat in his words rattled me to my core. I froze, my mind scrambling for a lie, for an excuse, for anything that could explain away the mountain of evidence sitting right in front of us. But there was nothing left to say. He knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to shatter the fragile illusion I had built. "I cannot believe this," George said, his voice trembling with disbelief as he stood up, his face pale with a mix of shock and raw anger. "You, of all people. With who? Who is B?" My throat tightened, and I swallowed hard. The air felt thick, suffocating, and the room seemed to spin around me. Every word that escaped his lips felt like a knife twisting deeper into the mess I had created. "George, please, can we just talk? You should have talked before you spread your legs for someone else." His words were a slap, a brutal truth that shattered whatever was left of my dignity. He didn't yell, but the silence in his tone carried a weight far heavier than any shouting could. That one sentence pierced me, a jagged shard of reality I couldn't deny. I stood there, frozen, paralyzed by the crushing shame that poured over me like cold sweat. I couldn't look him in the eye. The guilt, the remorse, it consumed me. But then, in the quiet that followed, he did something I never expected. Without a word, without a glance, he walked past me, grabbed his keys and left. No slammed doors. No rage-fueled accusations. Just silence. And that silence, the cold, suffocating kind, screamed louder than any fury ever could. Felt like it was crushing me from the inside out. The instant the front door clicked shut, I crumpled to the floor, my knees giving way. The weight of what I had done, of what I had let happen, sank in with the force of a tidal wave. Bryce had warned me. He had told me this would catch up to us one day, but he never told me how quickly or how painfully it would strike. I couldn't think straight. In a haze, I called him. He answered on the second ring, his voice a sharp contrast to the numbness that was quickly overtaking me. "He found the phone," I whispered, my voice shaking. Long pause. Then his voice, flat and cold, broke the silence. "Did he read anything?" "He saw enough." My stomach churned. Another pause. And then Bryce said something that made my blood run cold. "Well, maybe it's time to stop pretending. Let it all come out." "What do you mean?" I asked, confused but dread creeping into my chest. "I mean leave him. You said you were unhappy. You said you wanted more." His words were calculated, without hesitation, as if he had been waiting for this moment to come. I was stunned, paralyzed by the thought. "Bryce, I never said I was going to leave him." "You didn't have to," he replied, his tone dismissive, almost amused. "You showed it every time you came to me." The coldness in his voice, the certainty with which he spoke, made my stomach turn, twisting in knots of unease. There was something sharp in his words, something far darker than I had ever realized. My breath caught, and I hung up the phone without another word. That was the moment when doubt began to settle into my chest. It wasn't just about what we were doing anymore. It was about who Bryce really was. And I was starting to fear the answer. The days that followed felt like I was walking through a nightmare. George barely acknowledged me, and when he did, his gaze was cold and distant. He slept in the guest room, never once making any effort to close the gap between us. He came home late, and when he did, he avoided my eyes like they held a truth he wasn't ready to face. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse me or demand answers. Instead, he became a shadow, a ghost in the house we had once shared. His silence was deafening, crushing me with its weight. It would have been easier if he had yelled, if he had thrown things or unleashed the fury I had been dreading. But this unbearable silence was worse. It felt like he was shutting me out completely, as though I no longer existed to him. I tried once to break through, to reach him in the kitchen, my voice trembling with the desperate need for him to hear me, to understand. "George, I never meant to hurt you. I was lonely. I felt invisible." He didn't look up from his coffee, his eyes still fixed on the empty space in front of him. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "So you decided to screw my friend?" Had no response. The words I wanted to say lodged in my throat, and all I could do was let the tears fall. They were the only thing left of me, the only thing he might still recognize. While my marriage slowly crumbled, Bryce became more insistent, more possessive. He wasn't content with our stolen moments anymore. He demanded more of me, wanted more of me. He hated when I didn't answer his calls, when I tried to take a step back. He started showing up unannounced, his presence invading my every corner of life. Once, he was waiting outside my Pilates class, leaning against his truck, watching me as though I were something he owned. His eyes were always watching, always waiting. "You're mine now," he said one night, his voice low and dangerous as he grabbed my wrist, pulling me into his car for another quick, frantic encounter. His fingers dug into my skin, a sharp reminder of how tightly he had wrapped himself around me. "You need to stop playing house with him," he growled, his breath hot against my ear. "Come to me." I pulled my hand back, trying to resist the pull he had over me. "You don't own me, Bryce," I said, my voice shaking but defiant. His eyes darkened, and for the first time I saw something darker, more dangerous flicker behind them. "You gave yourself to me," he said, his grip tightening. "That means something." That was the moment I saw it. He was not just the passionate man I thought I loved. He had something else inside him, something dangerous. This was no longer just an affair. This was becoming an obsession. Just when I thought it couldn't get worse, George finally spoke. He came home one evening, poured himself a drink, and sat across from me at the dining table. "I want to tell you something," he said quietly. I braced myself. There's someone else. The words hit like a slap. What? I met someone. A woman from work. It started with coffee, turned into dinners. Nothing physical yet. But it was heading there. I stared at him, stunned. Why are you telling me this now? Because your betrayal gave me permission. And I hate that. I didn't know what to say. I had broken us, and now he was breaking too. 2 damaged people. 1 dead marriage. And a storm brewing with Bryce. I had never felt more broken in my life. My marriage was hanging by threads. My lover, once a fantasy, had turned into a dangerous shadow. And inside me, there was nothing left but guilt, confusion, and dread. After George's confession about the woman at work, something shifted. Not just between us, but within me. For the first time, I felt the full weight of what I had done. I had started this fire, and now it was out of control. It started with the late-night calls. Then the texts. Then the unannounced visits. To my house, my gym, even the grocery store. I'm not giving you up, Bryce said one evening as I stepped out of the spa near the plaza. He was leaning against his black SUV like he had been waiting for hours. You belong to me. I looked around. Bryce, stop showing up like this. This is not love. This is harassment. He laughed, dark and low. You don't get to walk away after what we shared. You think you can go back to your little husband and pretend this never happened. I tried to walk past him, but he grabbed my wrist again, this time harder than ever before. Let go of me, I hissed. Or what, he sneered. That was when I realized. I was in real danger. Bryce was no longer the charming, thrilling escape from reality. He was a storm I had welcomed into my life. And now, it was about to destroy everything in its path. That same week, George came home early. He didn't say a word. He placed a manila envelope on the kitchen table and walked upstairs. Opened it. Inside were photos. Me and Bryce, in the car outside a motel, even inside the yoga studio. He had followed me or hired someone to do it. And with the photos, a short note written in George's handwriting. Now I know everything. I sat there, frozen, staring at the evidence of my own destruction. I had betrayed the man who gave me 15 years of his life. I had burned it all, for a man who was now stalking me. The final blow came 3 days later. It was a Friday night. George had been distant all day. I tried to talk to him to say something. Anything, but he was quiet. I was in the bedroom, folding laundry, when I heard the front door open. Then footsteps. Heavy. Urgent. I walked out into the hallway. Just as Bryce stormed into my house. My house. What the hell? How did you get in here? Gasped. He held up a spare key. You gave me this, remember? Before I could respond, George appeared behind him. Holding a baseball bat in his right hand. Put the key down, George said, his voice low and controlled. Bryce turned. Oh, so now the husband wants to be a man. George stepped closer. I told you to leave her alone. You should thank me, Bryce smirked. I gave her something you never could, fire. I screamed as George swung the bat, missing Bryce by an inch. Bryce backed off fast, dropping the key. All right, Bryce barked. You two deserve each other, broken and boring. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I fell to the floor, shaking. George stood still for a moment. Then he dropped the bat, looked down at me and whispered, Get out! Begged, cried. I told him I would change, that I would do anything to make things right. But George had already made up his mind. You made a choice. Now live with it, he said. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just packed a suitcase for me and told me to leave. That night, I moved into a small apartment 2 towns away. Alone. Bryce tried to reach out a few times. I blocked every number. I couldn't even look at my reflection in the mirror without disgust. I had been selfish. I had been reckless. I had destroyed something beautiful. And for what? It's been 8 months now. George never looked back. He filed for divorce quietly. No drama. No fight. Just clean, cold distance. I heard he eventually started dating that woman from work. I hope she treats him better than I did. As for me, I have not been with anyone since. I can't trust myself. I don't even think I deserve happiness right now. Some nights, I lie awake remembering the thrill, passion, the danger. But it is always followed by the ache of loss. I traded loyalty for lust. And I lost. To everyone who followed my story to the end, thank you. Infidelity is not always loud or dramatic in the beginning. Sometimes it is soft. Starts with a gaze, conversation, a lonely heart craving more. But if you're not careful, that craving can cost you everything. Please share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in my shoes? Have you ever been caught between two lives? Let's talk. Let's heal. And if you love this story, you know what to do. Keep watching, keep subscribing, and keep supporting. Because every story I tell is powered by you. Thank you for staying with us. If you find it interesting and useful, please subscribe, like, and share so you don't miss the next video. Thanks.